My family actually grew up out in the LA area, and then when my mom was 16 and kind of getting into trouble, my uncle included, they decided to move the family to Buena Park, because at that time Buena Park was considered sort of like the path to assimilation. So my family jumped on that because my grandfather had the GI Bill, but my mom and my uncle were really like the first brown people to go to their high school, and that's actually when my uncle started to surf. And my mom always wanted to be a surfer, and she told me that growing up she would wear red Vans and all the girls would ask her what gang she was in, because back then, if you're familiar with LA culture, street gangs culture, red represents Crips. But for her, red is what all the surfers wore. So she wanted to be a surfer and a skater like my uncle. But everybody, due to her skin tone and how she looked and how people perceived her, they assumed that she was in some kind of a gang or had that association. So my mom always carried the beach with her and didn't get to surf or skate. She didn't really step into that world.
My dad's from Puerto Rico. My mom's Mexican. Her family's from Michoacan, Sahuayo, and Aguascalientes. That's where my grandma's from. And she still lives in East LA off Indiana, right across the street, you know, from the tamale factory that I think my mom worked at when she was like, you know, a teenager. Yeah, and I think my mom said that they lived, you know, everybody lived in East LA, so that's where everybody ended up, you know. And let's see. My mom went to Garfield High School, and my dad went to Roosevelt. My father, though, passed away when I was 3. I think you guys know that. And I was lucky enough to get a really rad stepdad. And he's from the island of Trinidad. So I was raised with all that Caribbean stuff. But I was raised by my Mexican mother, who's like pretty hardcore, you know, like she was pretty true to that culture. High expectations, but you know, she's awesome. Because of her, I do surf, you know, even though she didn't understand it, she always like supported it. So
my parents are immigrants from Mexico, like straight up. My dad, when he was 18 years old, went to TJ, Tijuana, and like waited for 6 months and attempted to cross the border, ran out of money. His shoes fell apart with him trying to run across the border, but finally made it after some time, because he comes from a big family too, 14 brothers and sisters. In Mexico, there is no way to get out of poverty. Like, everybody lives in poverty, and there's no way to try to make it a little bit better than that. So he kind of took the responsibility of being one of the first to go by himself. My parents raised us with this mentality that, like, we got all the way to this country, and now the privilege that you have is this ability to get an education, which can uplift you from the poverty that we've been living in our entire lives. And so that seed got planted very deeply in my head as the oldest girl.
I started surfing because my boyfriend surfed in high school.
Oh, wow.
I am one of those girls. I know. I dated a total guy who's like surfer dude, whole family of surfers. His dad grew up surfing. And I was the girl sitting on the beach waiting for the boyfriend to get out of the water.
You got tired of it.
I got tired of it because like I said, I grew up really tough, skated, biked, did it all. So surfing just seemed like the next thing for me to do, but because it was his thing. And
How old are you?
I was 16.
Oh, okay.
I was 16 and I was still finding my feminism and my grounding. I was just like following him around and letting him dictate my activities. And then I just decided one day, you know what? I want to surf. And I started to surf with him, but then we broke up for a bit. And I actually got more into surfing through a friend of mine and a high school friend of mine who's still my friend, Erin Sanchez. Like, we didn't have a lot of money. We would all share surfboards. We didn't have wetsuits, so surfing in the winter, it was cold, you dealt with it. Like, we just made it happen. And we would wake up at 4 a.m. and we would get all of our change together, throw it into my friend Mikey's car, and we would just go to the beach. Whatever money we had, we would get to the beach. We would drive straight down Beach Boulevard, get there.
The story's very similar.
Yeah, get there. It was like, we didn't care what the waves looked like. We were just happy to be at the beach. I didn't meet another female surfer until I was like 23 or 24 when I came back from Oregon. So yeah, when I was surfing, didn't really know a lot of female surfers. And it could have just been because where we surfed and, you know, missing each other and whatnot.
Yeah. And during that time, like, there was so much, like the Beach Boys, like all the music. I think growing up in Southern California, it's like just part of this culture. But I had a boyfriend too, or just this guy that I liked, and
Boy.
and you know, yeah, he surfed, and I think he kind of like got me into it.
Yeah.
Always watching videos at his house, and like my other friend was there, Jonathan. You guys know John?
I know Jonathan.
Yeah, and we just always would watch videos, and so just always, you know, he had the magazines, like he had the posters on his wall, and I was just like, this is so great. And I think there was one surf video, and there was like a tiny segment. I think it was Malia Jones was like the surfer. She's like this beautiful like Hawaiian chick, and I saw her surf, and I was like, yeah, man, I could do that. Like she kind of looks like me, you know, like for real. Like that's what I thought, and I was like, what a great life. And then I started like diving deep into it, like just studying it. You know, I lived in Marina Valley, so I wasn't close to the beach, you know, so I had to like watch it on TV, watch the videos, get the magazines. I had like Surf Girl magazine, like all of them, every like Surfer, Trans World, like any magazine that was I could get my hands on, or like books, like I was reading. I just really was like, I got to get to the beach. I think that was more it. Is like, how can I live this life if I'm so far from the beach? Oh. But
Who finally taught you? Who gave you
I
the
taught
first-
myself. You know, I think like I had various people kind of give me boards and say like, here's a board,
you go.
go for it. I'm talking $25 boards from like a garage sale, but I was just so desperate to surf that I was like, I'll take anything. Like I just want to try it.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was flailing for like a good 5 years, guys. Like just out there, just trial and error. But I think there was a trip to Santa Barbara, and I have photos of it somewhere in my social media. And my mom was like so cool. She did not understand my vision at all, but she was like, all right, Mija, you want to surf? Like, here's the beach. And so she took me to like buy a wetsuit. So I was like, dang, okay, my mom was being supportive. Like, hell yeah, I'm gonna do this, you know? And I did. I remember going out there, and I think I almost drowned, like for sure.
Yeah, Santa Barbara's
I had no idea what I was doing.
Easy break.
But I do remember some old man kind of paddling up to me, and he was like a super big, like big belly, bearded old man, and he was super sincere. I wish I knew the guy's name, but he was like, okay, I'm just gonna like help you out. And he's like, I'm gonna face you to the beach, and I'm gonna push you. And he did. He pushed me, and he was like, as soon as I push you, stand up. And I, you know, so I did, and I stood up, and I think like that's probably the first time I like legit like stood up, you know.
Yeah.
But after that, I made it like my life's mission to move to the beach.
When I quit my job and decided that I was gonna learn to surf, my parents thought I was crazy, because to them surfing is something that is kind of a waste of time. To them surfing is something that doesn't really have a point or a purpose. To them, they were kind of worried, like, oh my god, Giselle quit her job and now she's learning to surf. So it was, they never told me not to do it, but they definitely were confused as to why I was doing it, why I was changing all these things in my life, quitting my job, taking up surfing. And so for a while, I had to learn how to do it and practice without their acceptance. I used to be a middle school teacher in South Central LA and South Philadelphia. And when I started surfing, I couldn't stop but think about all my students, all the students I taught for 5 years, and how they would never have access to this really liberating and freeing thing that I had found, which was surfing, because they were either never going to have the access to the ocean, someone to teach them, the money to buy a surfboard. I didn't even think surfing was a Mexican thing until I went on a trip to Mexico, in the same state that my family's from, to this little beach town called Sayulita. And when I got there, I realized that surfing was incredibly big there. But my entire first year's learning to surf, I actually didn't think it even existed in Mexico until I went and I saw it for myself. And I think it really shifted something in my mindset about surfing. I think before I thought I was kind of an alien trying to come into this sport that wasn't even for my people or by my people. And when I went to Mexico and saw tons of Mexican surfers, I realized that it was part of us. It was part of our culture, part of our people.
My family thought I was crazy. Yeah, I think they still do. Yeah, they still don't quite understand it, but that's okay. I think I've came to this like my own realization that like that you have to do what makes you happy, you know, because it's not their dream, it's yours. And like I've read that somewhere and I love it because like it's the truth, you know. And at some point, I don't even remember, I was probably 21, I started to compete just in like the WSA and like random Roxy contests because I was like obsessed with Roxy, you know, because it was like girl surfing. But every contest was like $100, $150. You know, you had to gas to get there. It was just an expensive thing to do.
There's this perception that surfing is really laid back, and it can be, and there's great people in the sport, and I've had a lot of positive experiences surfing and friendships and same stories like you guys, people helping me out. But at the same time, I've had some really fucked up shit happen to me in the water where I'm just like, this is really frustrating and it sucks that this has to happen. And I know we all have had that. So I think as a sport, as a space, it could be very challenging and it's tiring at time. But, you know, that's why we find community and that's why we're doing what we're doing. So
I actually thought, I was like, I wonder if there are other Latina surfers because I certainly haven't met a single one. And then all of a sudden, these two show up in my life. And thanks to social media. Instagram. You begin to like poke around, look around, and my sister was like, check out this girl. I think she's Latina. You spoke so beautifully about surfing and everything it showed you every day that I was like, this is an awesome girl. And I don't know if I'm ever going to meet her, but she really inspires me to keep going. I used to watch this movie a lot when I was little. It inspired me to be a teacher.
Me too.
Stand and Deliver.
Favorite movie.
From Garfield High School, Jaime Escalante and his students who were the first group of Latinos to pass the AP calculus test. And he would always tell him, like, ganas. That's how you'll do anything. And so she posted something, Jaime Escalante, a meme saying, do something with ganas.
Yeah.
And right away, I don't often, like, comment or DM people, but I slid in your comments or I slid in your DMs. And I was just like, oh my God, she is Latina. And we just started talking about, like, hey, I'm from East LA too. Yeah. I was a teacher. And then it just became fun. Like, I would come over to Newport and we would surf. And then one day she tells me, hey, there's this girl doing a study. She wants to talk to women of color who are surfers. I talked to her. You should talk to her too.
My dissertation is about people that are in white male dominated spaces and how they negotiate those spaces, like the power relations within those spaces, how they're negotiating them and navigating them either successfully or unsuccessfully, right? And so I was interested in surfing because all the things we've been talking about, the lack of representation, the erasure of indigenous people's stories and surf history. So I was reading a lot about the history of surfing and how, as you all mentioned, you know, it didn't originate as a white sport, that it really became a white sport because it was co-opted. And so I was interested in, okay, well, what about Mexican American surfers, right? Like, Mexican American, what about us? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
where do we fit in?
I've always struggled with my own identity as identifying with Mexican. My mom is Mexican, full Mexican. My dad is Italian and Irish. And so growing up, it was really hard for me. I'm light skinned, blue eyes. So people would always make fun of me, say, you're not Mexican. You know, I wanted to really shed a light on this group of people and show the world, not the academic world necessarily, but just like the whole world, that there are people of color that surf. But like, there's just so many of us that are out there, but we're not connected.
I think I actually had a dream, and it was more about a place where people could come and learn all these things and sports that had changed my life, like boxing, martial arts, and surfing. Like a courage camp where we have these activities, but really the point of them all is to teach people the courage that they already have within themselves.
Yes, amen.
Yeah. And I said to you, I was like, but I want this to be for the people that wouldn't have access to these kinds of things if it weren't for us, for this little community that we're building. And right away you were like, yes. You know, we met Cass, and right away she was like, I have literally all of the Latino surfers that I talked to.
Yeah, I just interviewed all of them.
Let's bring them together. And so without meaning to start it, we kind of started it on accident.
Yeah,
We met up at Newport at 8 a.m. The water was cold. And we just gave them boards and took them in the water. Vanessa teaches the surfing because I'm not that great, but I take pictures. We always get together on the beach and we introduce each other because...
Which I love that. I love that we've
Yeah.
been doing that, you know? Yeah, Giselle's really good at this part too.
It's a teacher.
It's a teacher. It's a teacher in both of us, yeah. So just the introductions,
Yeah.
why they're there.
Why are you
Yeah.
here?
Mhm.
And people will talk about things like, oh, I've just always wanted to learn to surf and had nobody in my family to teach me. Or I had a bad experience in the ocean and I wanted a community to help me get back in the water. And one of the most memorable ones is a father and son.
The Moreno family.
I
Yeah.
don't want it, no pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, the Moreno family.
The
Yeah.
Moreno family. He shows up with his son. He's somebody who didn't know us, just showed up and said, you know, I just want to do things with my son that my father never did with me, right? Like as parents or as role models, we have the power to shift what our tribe gets exposed to.
And the cultural norms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, most of the time, even if people don't stand up and they're just riding waves on their belly, like I see huge smiles across.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's always looking back at me, and I think like that's why I do it.
Yeah.
Is that one moment, you know, where they look back at you or they put their hands up in the air and they're like so excited, and that's contagious.
Now, what I capture in those pictures is that moment.
Yeah, the
that
moments.
moment where people
That
do
one
something
moment.
that they do something that they didn't think they could do.
Yeah,
before.
they're facing the fear,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
being courageous.
That's courage right
That's
there.
courage. There it is. You know.
What we do to make sure that there are no barriers is that we have purchased a lot of boards on our own. We brought together any wetsuit that like we just don't use anymore, or
Or I
somebody.
collect them on like OfferUp. I find them for free for $20. Or,
Yeah. We
so,
like
you know.
collectively supply the equipment. We're really
Yeah.
good at getting a network of people together. Like people show up, bring extra boards. Like
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
really cool to see people show up ready to share what they have. It's funny because we all bring our Mexican blanket.
You made the observation once where we had 30 people on the beach at one point. We had a big camp once.
Yeah.
And you told me, you're like, this is the most diversity that I've seen on the beach in a really long time. And it's us who bring it. And the beach itself can be a very scary place, but we provide like that warmth.
Yeah,
come,
the
this
safe,
is your place
the
too.
safe place, or the place where they can, you know, not feel like any kind of shame or embarrassment of like trying something new. Because
We're very proud of where we all come from on our shared heritage. We don't necessarily exclude anybody.
no, yeah, we've
doesn't
had
identify that
we've had
way.
a lot of people,
Which is cool because
Yeah,
we're
friends
we're,
of friends
Yeah,
and-
we're trying to do something that's meaningful by.
you don't have to be Mexican to surf with
Yeah,
us.
you don't at all, but we also want
Yeah.
to make sure that we're highlighting the fact that there is that lack of representation, and to highlight that, to celebrate it, to give people a place to come to. We are this social club, but we also are providing so much more. We're providing the space, we're providing the access, we're trying to give
Providing
people
equipment.
the equipment, you know, the cultural barriers, a place
It's
to
free.
talk about it.
Plenty of kids around here that I, you know, I'm sure they look at me, you know, when I walk Marley to school, and they're curious about
Yeah.
me.
They are.
You know, why is her hair blonde? Why she speaks perfect English? She says dude a lot, you know, and
Even seeing a surf van or
Yeah,
a
it
surfboard
just,
on
you
top of
know,
a car in these neighborhoods, people are.
that's gonna spark something in
It's gonna
some
spark
little
something.
girl in this neighborhood who's gonna
Yes.
say, you know what, I had a neighbor and she used to surf.
Yeah.
You know, or I saw her driving around in that van with like a pink surfboard on top,
Yeah.
and that's it, you know, if that's it. Like that's all you need is to see yourself doing it.
I hope that through Courage Camps, somehow we're able to inspire that little Latina girl.
Yeah,
who
it'd be
picks
nice.
up a board and never sets it down, right? And makes a difference in the world.
It's been really, really great, honestly. It's really. Our connection is.
I love you guys.
amazing.
yeah.